it's very chaotic at the same time. I don't know. I feel
100%.
like it allows like a lot of opportunity, but at the same time, like a lot of people who I wouldn't say who don't deserve to have voices, but I would say just like are not trying to spread like positivity or
Mhm.
like they're not worried about the betterment of all people. Like it also amplifies their voice. So I feel like there's definitely pros and cons to like the whole internet era and like being able to just like at the click of your fingers, just like make whatever you want.
Oh yeah, 100%. Honestly, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that I'm glad that we're getting to this part of the conversation because I've always been really opinionated about this shit. Like this
Mhm.
specifically. I feel like the internet because it's essentially like I think of it as the wild wild west. In the grand scheme of human history, it's like a fucking baby.
Mhm.
It's like it just learned to walk, but it's also revolutionized everything we do because shit, we couldn't even do this without the internet.
Mhm.
And it's beautiful because, like you're saying, you can connect with people all over the world with interests similar to your own. And for some people, that could be really beneficial because just even if it's something just like food wrapping. But like, say you're really into food wrapping, but you're the only person in your town that is into food wrapping. There's like an air of loneliness to it. But
Mhm.
with the internet, it can bring the people together that you would never even expect it to. But like you said, it does give people a platform that they don't always deserve.
Mhm.
Like Logan Paul, for example.
Yeah.
He's a prime example of somebody who just got famous off of ignorance mainly.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the dangers of the internet. But I feel like unfortunately there's no way to kind of like I don't want to say like to police it because you can't police the internet. I don't think it's possible. It's just too expansive. There's too many people who use it, and it would never work. Like, how are you gonna globally how are you gonna maintain surveillance on an ever expanding network that ultimately doesn't physically exist as well? Yeah.
Uh, I feel like people like Logan Paul
Mhm.
who make like that kind of content. I feel like their time will come and they won't be around forever because it's just like the type of stuff they do.
Mhm.
It's not like lasting for themselves. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're not living, and I can't speak for him because I don't know him personally, but like,
Mhm.
I feel like he's not living like a maintainable lifestyle. So, like, yeah, he might be popping on the internet for like 5 years, but I feel like with anybody, like YouTubers, like you find out crazy shit about them years later. It's
Mhm.
like their time comes, like people see what they're really about. Like, I feel like you can only fake it on the internet like so much. Like
Yeah.
people can kind of see through that.
Yeah. 100%. And I think that excuse me, sorry. What's it called? I think that especially with the internet just being so unforgiving too, honestly. It's
Mhm.
just like it's a beautiful place and it's a cruel place at the same time. It's really just like yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
Bro, I saw
Um
it on Twitter, not to cut you off.
no, go ahead, go
Like
ahead.
somebody, I want to say they found like a dog, like or two dogs, and they were like the owner had a stroke, and like he was just trying to figure out like, yo, how can I help these dogs? Because like they have infections in their ears, and
Hmm.
like he was afraid that if he brought them to like the pound that they'd be put down.
Yeah.
And I saw somebody comment, it's like, yo, why are you coming on Twitter trying to figure that out? And I'm just like,
Bruh.
why are you on here? Like he's just trying to like solve the situation to the best he can using the internet, which is like you
Mhm.
said, a very expansive and like you never know. And here this person is on here like not helping the situation at all, just
Yeah.
inserting like their weird ass opinion, like for no reason.
Yeah, for real. It's like I think one of the downsides of the internet, or just like, yeah, social media and the internet, they're not necessarily one and the same, but you can't have like social media without having the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that it really allows people to just like not be themselves, like to kind of dissociate. Because I doubt that's the kind of shit you would say to somebody like in real life. You know, it allows you to it allows you to just like be a not a okay. I don't remember the word that I'm looking for, the phrase, so I'm just not going to say it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it just allows you to be like blindly cruel and feel like little to no repercussion.
Word.
because you don't know the person, they don't know you. And as far as they're concerned, you're just a face on the screen, you know?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's a lot. It's definitely like this person's a human being. Like at the end of the day, like you might not know them. I feel like there's a lot of people who hide behind like profile pictures that are not them, like just to say what they want. But I feel like I don't know. That's like being a coward, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I would have to agree with you because I'm someone who believes in like presenting one's authentic self, and that doesn't necessarily mean like sharing every single like moment, not every moment, but like every like inch or aspect of who I am. I don't think it's something that I need to share at once, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I can't be me. You know, like I like to
Word.
think that I'm a nice person. I get along with people, and I try to present myself as I am in real life in
Hmm.
social media too. You know, I feel like that's something our generation is very aware of too. Because I remember when Instagram itself was first popping, like back when we were in high school, filters were the craze. And I feel like as we've gone on and grown older, a lot of people are more interested in like maybe not things that are grounded, but things that are definitely a little more authentic.
Word.
You don't see as many filters anymore. I feel like there's an overwhelming consensus of. I mean, this is just my opinion. I could be wrong, but I
Mm.
feel like when I'm on the internet and I see a lot of stuff, like when it comes to like editing someone's photo or somebody
Mhm.
editing their photo, like I feel like there's just an overwhelming consensus of just like, oh, why are you doing that nowadays? Whereas it always used to be, well, no, not always used to be, but there was a time when people were just like freely editing their photos. I don't care if you edit your photos or not because I understand that people can have very like not fragile like perceptions of themselves, but not everybody always likes the way they look.
Word.
And I 100% feel that. But when I was younger, as a young fat kid growing up, I didn't like the way I looked. My uncle used to call me Butterball, and yeah, sure, it's a nice family name. But I would look at myself and I'm just like, damn, that's exactly what I look like. And I was really happy to like lose a lot of that weight growing up. But now that I've like kind of put some of it back on, there's some days where I look at myself and I'm just like, okay, you look fine. But other days I feel like I'll just feel like, you could look better. And I'll catch myself when I'm doing that kind of stuff
Hmm.
because I genuinely enjoy how I look. I think I'm okay. You know?
Hmm.
I'm
Uh,
sorry. I didn't mean to turn that into just like a me thing, but I just feel
no,
like it's easier
we're,
for me to be vulnerable.
I can say, we are we like the first generation to come up with like having the internet probably since like children.
I wouldn't say we're the first generation because there's probably people who are like, okay, there's millennials, which are like
Hmm.
people from like 85 to I think like the mid 90s, which
Hmm.
is like right before everyone from like 95 to 2006. I
Okay.
think, I don't know, I think that's the Gen Z era,
Hmm.
but I don't know. I feel like we're kind of in that space where we remember a lot of the stuff from the 90s that made its way into the early 2000s. But we remember a lot of the stuff from like the early to mid 2000s. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like MySpace was a thing in the early 2000s, and the internet has existed since like, to my knowledge, at least the 90s. But I
Mm.
think social media grew ever more present as the 2000s went on.
Word. I think when we were in middle school
Hmm.
was when like social media was like really like becoming like a foundation. So
Yeah.
to my point is like we were like our self-esteem was like heavily influenced and affected by like social media as opposed to like people who are a little bit older than us who were
Mhm.
like living in a time like before like I wouldn't say the internet but like before everybody had access to the internet.
Yeah, for
So it's
real.
kind of like I get that because like that whole phase where like everybody was using like the Snapchat dog filter and everything, it's like it's
Mhm.
because like this was like the very first time where you could like put yourself out to the entire world and
Yeah.
everybody has something to say. So it's
Hmm.
like I feel like a lot of people were very protective about how they look and they didn't want to do this or that because it's like before that it'd just be your town or your immediate family, your friends who like could say these things about you. But like it got to a space where it's like, all right, the entire world can see me here. So it's like a lot of people felt like they I don't know, like had to cover up. And
Hmm.
like to the same thing, like I grew up like a chubby kid too. So like and I had like my phases where I had like the bald haircut and I was like super
Oh
chubby with
man.
glasses. And I was very self-conscious about that, but I think I always knew that it was just the internet. So I was just like, I wouldn't say comfortable in my skin because like I know everybody struggles with that, but I think I was
Mhm.
just like very good at that from a young age of just like knowing it's like I was like, all right, I might not look the best, but it's like I know all these people with all these filters are doing the same exact thing, trying to cover up the same way I am.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I gotta commend you for that because that's not something that a lot of kids, especially at a young age, can kind of like. That's not something that they can naturally come to. I feel like a lot of like back when we are like 12, 13, especially when like social media is like really taking off, it especially doesn't help that these marketing companies are advertising to us young kids telling us this isn't what you're supposed to look like, this is what you're supposed to look like. And then on top of that, like just not seeing prominent people of color, just like in the mainstream in most industries, just being subjected to essentially just like a lot of like Eurocentric beauty standards and then Eurocentric idols or like just like famous white people to
Especially
just be
like
real.
especially I feel
Hmm.
like even if you look at like the way like the average like attractive person is supposed to look like today as opposed to like 2009,
Hmm.
like back then it was like a lot of like very thin like people like you said very eurocentric like features. I feel like now because of the internet, because like you can't police it,
Hmm.
like people of color especially have like a voice to like speak up and be like no, like this is beautiful too.
Yeah.
And then from there it kind of like shifted the culture a little bit, and it
Hmm.
became like all right, now people are following these trends and like they became like the thing to follow.
Yeah. That's really cool because I feel like that in itself just lends to the beauty of the internet, the fact that uh, communities that have never really had a voice because they are now on the internet
Mm-hmm.
and an endless space now have that voice. It may not be the largest seat at the table, at the ever expanding table, nonetheless. But I do think that just having an internet presence, especially nowadays, has become really important to almost anything that you want to do. Be it
So
organizing, be it a rapper, be it a writer. You can't. It feels almost impossible to do something and become successful without having to establish a social media presence. I think that's a crazy standard that's been set in a matter of like 10 years.
I would say like the last 5 to 10 years definitely, because like I'm one who's like I have like a lot of like artists that I work with and like just like a community of like artists I support, and I'm
Mhm.
always just pushing for like yeah, I know the social media shit is like a drag sometimes, but like if you really want to do this, like you have to have like a very strong present like on these platforms because like that's just the best way for people to discover you.
Yeah, 100%. Like I hate how draining it feels too. Like I'm incredibly guilty of it. I it's like I think I became much more aware of it after watching this documentary that I wrote about on my blog, The Social Dilemma.
Hmm.
And it basically talks about how social media was just made to be addictive, to keep you on it for as long as possible. And then in doing that, they create these algorithms that will feed you content that may not necessarily even like be in your best interest, but a lot of people around you are clicking on it. Excuse me. It's viral, it's circulating, all that stuff.
Hmm.
And because of it, you end up seeing things or thinking things that you would otherwise have probably never thought or saw in the first place. And the kind of effect that can have on a young person's psyche, and maybe not even somebody our age, somebody even younger, like my little brother who's 15. Like I worry all the time about what the fuck he's watching on the internet
Word.
because I know that when I was growing up on the internet, it was definitely like it was an experience to say the least. Being introduced to all these new things that I probably would not have heard of otherwise, be they good for me or bad for me. It's it's different.
Hmm.
It's like a real shock.
Can we like talk about like TikTok culture for a second?
Oh yeah, no, 100%.
I feel like what you're saying is like the epitome of like that app. And like I don't judge people like who have TikTok because like I get it. Like it's very
Mhm.
entertaining. But just that idea of like forced like content, like an algorithm saying what you're into and what you're not, as opposed to a social media platform where you can choose who you follow
Yeah.
and like you can see that. I don't know. I could just never like it just feels like